The brother is asking this common belief among us that if we find that the greater the tests and the sufferings that we go through, does that mean that we are closer to Allah? Because if Allah tests you more, it means that you are closer. So the scholars have spoken about this, and the Prophet ﷺ did say, "Inna ashadda bala'an al-anbiya." The ones who receive the most tests and trials in this life are the prophets. Then those who are closer to them in action and piety, and then the ones after them. So the degree of your piety and closest to Allah and to the prophets, the more the tests and the calamities naturally are going to be. But we need to understand two things. Number one, if you are not close to Allah, does that mean you don't get tests and trials? No, you will get tests and trials. But the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give a person who's closer to Allah more sufferings is, number one, the suffering and the test has two aspects to it, to a believer, a strong believer. Number one, Allah knows that with that extra test, that believer is going to pass that test. And the result of passing that test is raising his or her rank even higher. Because Allah wants to raise them higher. Why? Because Allah is just. And on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises people based on the test they went through and how many they passed. So their value rises. So when He sees a strong believer, Allah gives him more calamities and tests to raise his value. And number two, He knows he'll pass them. And number three, there is a third reason scholars said, they become role models of strength for others. Someone has to go through trials in front of you for you to take them as role models, and they be your strength. So Allah chooses the ones who are closer to Him because they can handle it more than people who are not as close to Him. So your trials become less. Sometimes the trials are different. You may not go through the same trial. If I went through a different trial, maybe Allah knows I can't pass it. Maybe the trial that I went through, if you went through it, you won't pass. So Allah gives you the trial that suits you. I want you to remember something, very good question. Any trial you go through, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows already that you have the ability to get through it, inshallah. You have the ability. As for the disbeliever who goes through trials, it's because the disbeliever, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown them signs after signs after signs, and those who give up on Allah, Allah shows them signs after signs after signs. It comes to a point where He just gives them up. He gives them up to who? He gives them up to the natural world. So the calamities they're going through is the natural calamities of the world. And some things which Allah decrees upon them, it's not going to benefit them anything, except in this world, but not in the hereafter. So theirs is a lose-lose situation. But for the believer who's closer to Allah, goes through calamities, it's a win-win situation. I hope, insha'Allah, that gives you a small summary of it, insha'Allah. So my calamity, akhi, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that I have the power and the ability to get through it, and I can be a role model in it. Other things, maybe I'll fail. And one more thing, sometimes calamities is not what it appears. Sometimes it's not losing something. Calamities can be gaining something. So you might gain a lot of wealth, you might gain a lot of health, you might gain a lot of reputation. And the ulama said that's the hardest of trials. Because if you get more blessings, what do you automatically think? You start thinking that life is good for you, God must love you. When we see somebody going through losses, sometimes we think, you know, they must have done something really bad. If they lose their business, maybe God hasn't blessed them. But if their business goes good, we say Allah maybe love them and they're blessed. No, not necessarily. So there is a calamity of being given everything, and it's not going to mean anything. It's just that Allah is just giving you whatever's left in the bottle. You're not going to get anything in the hereafter which you can use against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.